It's such a lovely winter's day here in South Africa today, and so I decided to come and sit outside on our patio and to film a video for you guys where I highlight and discuss all my 5-star reads that I've had so far in 2025. Welcome my bookworm friends, Kim here, and welcome on back to Bookworm Buzz. As I said, in today's video, I'm going to be discussing all the 5-star reads that I have had so far in 2025. So in other words, I'm going to be going through all my 5-star reads from January 2025 until the end of June 2025. I am not going to rank these books in any sort of order. I just have a pile right here of all my 5-star reads, and I am just going to go from top to bottom through this pile. Okay, my friends, so get a drink, settle in, and join me today for this fun video. So as many of you can see, I'm sitting in a bit of a different location today. I'm not in my home office. I'm actually sitting outside on our patio. I'm looking out there at the beautiful blue sky. The sun is shining, and so it was just the perfect day to sit out here. But enough about that. Let's kick things off. Okay, my friends, the first book that I am going to share with you today is this one. This was one of my first 5-star reads of the year. This is called The Eyes Are the Best Part, and the author is Monica Kim. This is a horror novel, but it's not a horror novel in the traditional sense. The horror in this book is a little bit more, I don't know if subtle is the right word, but it's not horror in terms of scares and frights and all that type of thing. But this was such a good read. I read it towards the beginning of 2025 and I just absolutely loved it just because it was so different. In this book, we are basically following the main character's descent into madness. I mean, to put it bluntly, that's what it is. She lives with her sister and her mother. Her mother comes home at some stage with a new boyfriend. He is a white guy, and the two sisters do not like this man at all. And the story pretty much goes from there. Now, you may think, what do eyeballs have to do with the story? But I can tell you that the story is literally about eating eyeballs. And more than that, I'm not going to say. Just know that this one is very different. If you enjoy your horrors and you like something that is a little bit more, maybe, yeah, like I said, I don't know if subtle is the right word, but let's just say a little bit different to the norm, then you might want to pick this one up and give this one a go. Then my next 5-star read to share with you guys is this one. This one has made an appearance in a fairly recent video of mine because I think I read this one in May. Was it? No, maybe it was June. I think I might have read this one in June. But anyway, this was a 5-star read for me. I've read quite a number of books by Alice Feeney and I tend to enjoy them, but I haven't given a lot of them 5 stars. I think she was the author of a book called Sometimes I Lie. Am I correct about that? Yes, I am. So I gave Sometimes I Lie 5 stars, and then I gave this one 5 stars. This was just such a great atmospheric novel. Basically, in this book, we are following an author. He has just had some very good news from his publishers, and he wants to share that news with his wife. His wife isn't home. She's actually in her car. So she phones her. She picks up the phone. She's talking to him. Suddenly, she says, oh, she has to stop. There's something in the road, and he's begging her not to get out of her car. And of course, she stops. She leaves the phone on the seat and gets out of her car, and she is never heard from or seen again. So basically, this guy, the main character, then has to deal with his loss. Like I mentioned, he is an author, and so he's battling to write his next book. He's battling to get into things. So he decides to go to an isolated island. I think there are about 25 people that live on this island. He's going to stay there. He's going to focus. He's going to try and get over the loss of his wife and move forward. And the story goes from there. This one was just so, it was just so great. The writing was really divine. It is a little bit of a slower read. So if you're wanting plot twist after plot twist, that's not going to be what you're going to get here. But it is a slow burn thriller. It's very atmospheric. There are weird things that go on, things that go bump in the night, and so on. And I just absolutely love this one. Next up is the horror book that pretty much got me into reading horrors, because before this year, I was not a horror reader. I pretty much read thrillers, suspense, mystery novels, but this year, and because of this book, I now do read horror novels. And this is Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. Oh, you guys, I just fell in love with this story. It was so scary, it was so creepy. There were scenes in this book where the hairs were literally standing up on my arms. I just absolutely loved it. So basically in the story, we are following 8-year-old Bella. She obviously lives with her mom and her dad, and then there is also Gran who is around. But then there is an entity that interacts with Bella, let's put it that way. And this entity is called Other Mommy. Other Mommy sometimes comes out of the cupboard, sometimes she's under Bella's bed, sometimes she's in her bathroom with her. And oh gosh, this story, I just absolutely love it. It's one of these books that just took me so by surprise, because I didn't expect to love this one as much as I did, and I didn't expect to find it as scary and as creepy as I did. It is one of those books where you should go into this one blind, not knowing a lot more than what I have said to you now. But if you are a fan of horrors or of being creeped out or of entities and possessions and those type of things, then this will be the book for you. Next up is a book from probably currently my favorite author, and that is Ashley Winstead. This one is called The Last Housewife. Now, I know that Ashley Winstead is not for everybody. I have seen that some people don't really enjoy her books, but man alive, I absolutely love this author. I love her writing. She writes thrillers and mystery novels, but the quality of her writing is just so good, and there was nothing different about this book. This was also just quality writing, a good plot, and oh, I just absolutely loved it. Now, this is definitely an adults-only thriller, let me say that. Also, you need to pay attention to the trigger warnings at the beginning of this book if you are a sensitive reader. I am not a sensitive reader. I can go dark, I can go messed up, so I was fine with this. But let's just say that this is a cult story, and it does focus on, I don't know if this is the right word, a sex cult. I suppose that is the correct word. But there are also trigger warnings for abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, rape, all sorts of things. So definitely, if you are a sensitive reader, then maybe be cautious going into this one. But I really loved it. And this is a book where I just think, the less you know, the better. All you really need to know is that the lead protagonist in this book, she left college, and then 8 years later, she comes back to college to investigate the death of one of her best friends. And from there, she gets pulled into a dark and sadistic world, and I'm going to leave it at that. It was fantastic. If you are a fan of this author and you haven't read this book, then I definitely recommend it. I've given Ashley Winstead's books, I think, just about all of them I've given 5 stars. I think there was one that I didn't give 5 stars to. And so she's clearly an author that works for me. I will always recommend her books. And like I say, if you have not read this one and you are a fan of her writing style, then definitely pick this one up. And then the only fantasy novel that I have awarded 5 stars to this year is this one. This is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now, I only started reading fantasy this year, and so I'm still fairly new to the genre. This book I decided to buy in the box set. So there are 3 books in the set. I've only read the first book, and that is this one called The Poppy War. Absolutely loved this one, gave it 5 stars. This one read quite adult, which I really liked, because a lot of these sort of fantasy novels can go a little bit YA and sometimes new adult, whereas this one was very much more of an adult fantasy. That said, the main protagonist in this book is a girl by the name of Rin. When the story starts, she is only 14 years old. She is then sent to a military academy. She has to write and pass all sorts of tests and perform at her absolute best to get into this military academy, which she does. And she is then trained in this academy before moving out into the world. So if you are someone that loves the sort of academy setting or a school setting, just know that that is part of this book, but it is only probably, I don't know, maybe a third to a half of this book is set in the academy. But from there, she moves out into the world. She forms part of a group of fighters, also some of which come from the academy, who then have to go, and they are, well, let me not say they have to go. They are put into a war type situation. So yes, there is war quite heavily in the story. A lot of the story features around sort of violence and war and conflict and all of that. So you do need to be okay with that. You know, the thing is, I wasn't actually sure if I was going to enjoy that aspect of the book, but then I really did, because the book also focuses a lot on relationships and friendships and trust between people, trust between friends. And yeah, overall, excellent read. Definitely recommend this one. Then another 5-star read that I recently finished. This is The Ghostwriter by Julie Clark. This is again a fairly new release, and I did finish reading this one fairly recently as well. Again, just a fantastic read that had me turning the pages. I was very invested in the story. I couldn't wait to see where it was going. It's an interesting story because it's set in 2 different timelines. So basically, in the story, you have the main protagonist she's a writer, she's a ghostwriter. Her father is also an author. He's a horror author. But his past is a little bit dodgy because when he was young, when he was still a child, his brother and his sister were murdered, and he became the prime suspect at the time. However, because there was not enough evidence to charge him, he was never charged and he was never convicted of the crime. But to this day, being in the present day, nobody actually knows what happened that night until he decides to contact his daughter, who is this ghostwriter, and to ask her if she will come and ghostwrite his memoir. And he tells her that he is ready to disclose everything that happened that night. So, I mean, just a totally gripping plot. I really loved the plot. I loved the mystery aspect. I loved trying to work out what happened that night. Was this guy guilty? Wasn't he guilty? Did he murder his siblings? Didn't he? Who could have done it if he hadn't have done it? And so, yeah, this was one that I just thoroughly enjoyed. I got great entertainment from it. And so it was a definite 5-star. Then, my friends, the next 5-star to share with you is this one called My Darling Girl. And this is by Jennifer McMahon. Now, this is an author who I absolutely love as well. I have awarded 5 stars to a number of her books. She tends to pull in sort of paranormal or supernatural elements into her thrillers and her horrors, which is something that I love. This book is described as a horror/thriller/mystery novel. In this book, we are basically following the main character, and she is a mother, she's a wife, she's an artist, and she's also the survivor of childhood abuse at the hands of her mother. Lo and behold, now as an adult, her mother gets very, very sick, and she takes the decision to allow her mother to move in with them so that she can see out her last days surrounded by family and being comfortable. However, from the minute her mother arrives, eerie things start to happen, things go wrong, spooky, creepy things are going on. And yeah, more than that, I'm not sure that I should say. Now, I must tell you, this book does go in a direction that I can see some people won't enjoy, or they won't be on board with it, or they will think it is too over the top. It wasn't for me. I loved the direction it went in, and I specifically loved the ending. The ending was one of those ambiguous endings, but yet not that ambiguous if you really had to think it through. And I just loved where the story went. But just know that there is a definite paranormal/supernatural element to the story, so you do need to be okay with that. I think I've already mentioned I love those elements in my thrillers or my horrors. And so this one ticked all the boxes for me, and I absolutely loved it. Yes, the next book is by an author that gets a lot of flack on YouTube and on social media generally, and that is Frida McFadden. Yep, I read a Frida McFadden book, and yep, I awarded it 5 stars. Just because of the pure fun entertainment factor, this book had to get 5 stars. I am a reader who can really appreciate great writing, great character development, all of those things, but I'm also a reader who very often just wants to have fun and who wants to be entertained. I love thrillers that are full of twists and turns and things that catch me off guard. And yes, Frida McFadden does write books like that. They are classified as popcorn thrillers, but if you are in a rut and you are needing something fast-paced and very entertaining, this is going to be the book for you. I thought it was such fun. And just because it was such fun, I had to award 5 stars to this read. So basically, in the story, we are following Sydney. Sydney is looking for love, basically. She has not yet found her dream man, and so she is on the hunt for him. She joins a number of dating apps, and some of her dates have not gone specifically well. And then there is one date that goes very badly, but luckily, a stranger rocks up and gets her out of what is and could have ended up being a very bad situation. And she falls for the stranger. She thinks she has now met her perfect man. He's good looking, he's a doctor, he's educated, he's just everything she's been looking for. However, there are then a spate of murders in her area, and it comes to light, I can't remember how exactly, that these murders and the women that have been murdered are women who have been on dating websites, and they now suspect that the murderer may also be someone who is hiding on a dating website. And suddenly Sydney starts to put a few things together, and she starts to wonder if her man is actually as perfect and as flawless as she initially thought. And that is all you need to know, my friends, because the story goes from there. It is fun, it is fast, it is riveting, it is twisty and turny. I'm not someone who goes into books trying to guess the twists or trying to guess the end. And so I just read, taking every book page by page. And so a lot of the twists in this story caught me off guard. And I mean, as I've already said earlier on, this was just too much fun not to award 5 stars. And then next up, we have this fantastic read, which is titled What Happened to Nina? And the author is Dervla McTiernan. This is another one that I finished very recently. You would probably have seen it in my June monthly wrap up. I loved the story. I went into this one very, very blind, and I ended up absolutely loving it. Because in the story, we are following a very young couple. They're in their late teens or maybe their very early 20s. On the face of it, they have this wonderful, perfect relationship. They decide to go away together just for the weekend, and lo and behold, at the end of the weekend, only one of them returns, and Nina is missing. So hence the title, What Happened to Nina? That is basically what this book is about. So this is a thriller mystery where we are following the two different families. So you are following from Nina's parents' point of view, and then also from her boyfriend's point of view. So obviously he is professing his innocence. His parents completely believe him. They employ the best lawyers to get him out of this pickle, because obviously he was the last person to see Nina, and so he becomes a suspect. Then you have Nina's parents, on the other hand, who are devastated, destroyed. They don't know where their daughter is. Is she alive? Is she dead? What happened to her? And so you get into the story through their eyes as well. And I just thought this was just such a good read. It was very, I don't know if I want to say it was very emotional, but it was definitely emotional, because you could put yourself in the shoes of specifically Nina's parents. But then interestingly enough, also, if you put yourself in the shoes of Simon's parents, like if you have a child who has perhaps done something wrong, but yet they claim and they are adamant that they hadn't or they haven't, and obviously you are going to believe your child. So I just found this one not only a great thriller, but just a very good book in terms of really trying to put myself into the shoes of these different parents and to imagine what they were going through. So anyway, without discussing it any further, if you haven't read this one, I highly suggest you do. It's not a specifically new novel. I actually can't remember exactly when this one was published, but let me see if I can see here. Oh, it's not specifically old. It was published in 2023. So you should still be able to get this one through your local library or wherever it is that you get your books, and definitely give this one a go. Then the next few books that I am going to be chatting to you guys about in this video are books where I don't actually have the physical book. I read these books on my Kindle. So let's start with the first one. The first one is by Ronald Mulvey, and it is titled Come With Me. Now this one, if you check it out on Goodreads, it is described as a horror novel, also a thriller, also a mystery. Now just know that I would not classify this book as a horror. So if you have not read it because you are worried about that aspect, please don't be. Please pick this one up. My gosh, was I surprised by this read. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. In the story, we are basically following Aaron. He is dealing with the very recent loss of his wife. His wife was caught up and shot in a store by a gunman who just opened up or started shooting everybody in the store. And unfortunately, his wife is one of the people that are killed. In his grief and in his, well, let's just say in trying to deal with his grief, he obviously is at home. He's packing up her things and he finds a receipt for a motel that his wife went and stayed at when she had told him that she was actually going to be somewhere else doing something else. And so the story progresses from there. It is really a mystery. At its heart, this book is a mystery. But again, I must tell you, there is a supernatural sort of paranormal element to the story. His wife does come to him, and I don't think this is a spoiler because this is pretty much said in the blurb, but he does interact with his wife now and then as a ghost. So there are those aspects to the story, but primarily it is a mystery. He is trying to understand what his wife was doing, where she was, what she was involved in, and so on in the weeks leading up to her death. And as I said, loved this book. It was actually my first read by Ronald Malfi, and now it will not be my last. I actually have 2 books on order. I'm getting them from Amazon, so they haven't arrived yet, by this author, just because I love the story so much. So if what I've said to you now tickles your fancy, then definitely give this one a go. Then the last book to make it into this video, and surprisingly, it's not a thriller, it's not a horror, it's not a mystery. It is this amazing book called The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell. The author is Robert Dugoni. Now, oh, you guys, this book... This book caught me so off guard. I mean, many of you know I don't tend to read a lot of contemporary fiction, which this book is. It's also a coming of age story. I don't read a lot of that either, but this was such an easy 5-star read for me. I cried like an absolute baby at the end of this book. Okay, given I was going through some sort of personal issues at that time, and so the story, the meaning, the lesson that was in this book really hit me very hard at the end of the story. But I think even without that, this is definitely a tearjerker. This is the story of young Sam. Now, Sam was born with a condition where I can't remember if it's his irises or his pupils. I think it's his irises are red. So you can imagine how he is treated at school, how he is bullied by his classmates, how he is picked on. And because of his red eyes, he gets the nickname Sam Hell. But his life, although difficult because of the bullying and all of that, is made slightly better because he makes friends with 2 very... No, I don't want to say different. They are 2 kids in his class who are also bullied a little bit. And he makes friends with these 2 kids, and together they experience their childhoods and they grow up into adults, still being the closest of friends. And really, this story, it follows Sam. It follows his relationships with these 2 friends of his. It follows also, it's a very heavy on the whole aspect of family and your relationships with your parents, with your mother, with your father. So in the story, there's a lot centered on that, around Sam's relationship with his dad, with his mom. So it really is not immensely fast-paced. It's not this really heavy plot-driven story. It's more of a character-driven story that focuses on relationships, friendships, loyalty, loss, death. Oh, my friends, I don't even want to say more than that. Even thinking about this book right now, I actually feel like I can get teary over it. It was that good. I absolutely loved it. You may be someone who watches this channel because I do a lot of thriller reviews and mystery reviews, but just know that this one is one of my favorite books of the year, and it's not a thriller or a mystery. It's a contemporary fiction novel. If you haven't read this one and you like books like that, you like character stories that pull on the heartstrings and that really are about real life, then this is going to be the book for you. And on that note, my friends, it is time to wrap up this video. So these are all the books that I have read this year so far that I awarded 5 stars to. So I still have another 6 months to go. I am hoping that I am going to have a ton more 5-star reads because I am very happy with how many 5 stars I have had this year so far. Please do leave your comments down below and let me know how your reading year is going. How many 5-star reads have you read? And is there a book that you experienced this year or awarded 5 stars to that you really think I should read? Definitely leave those comments down below. And on that note, my friends, let me leave things here and say happy reading, bookworms. Bye.